Hello, this is Cindy Mazzaferro with Powerful Beyond Measure, and I'm so excited to have with me today Marcia Cone. I hope I said that right.
Did. Thank you.
And she is a writer, speaker, change strategist, and advocate for women. As founding CEO of the Women's Fund of Rhode Island, she successfully advocated for policy advances, including women, leadership representation, and paid family leave. Her activism continues through her writing, speaking, and consulting with philanthropic, corporate, and governmental organizations. Marcia resides in East Greenwich, Rhode Island, and Vienna, Australia with her family. So we can hear a little bit about that.
Yeah.
So welcome and thanks for joining me today, Marcia.
Thank you, Cindy. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Yeah, this is an exciting time in your life. Do you want to share the audience what's going on briefly before we talk about your wonderful book?
Oh, sure. Yes, lots going on. So about to take off for a month to head over to Vienna and see my significant other, who will soon be my life partner. And we're getting married in December. And to visit with my daughter, who's in school over in Switzerland. So she'll come over for a week vacation with us. So
wonderful. And so we're very fortunate to get this recording time in with Marcia before she takes the plane and goes off and starts a really fabulous part of her life. So we're all wishing you safe travels and just a wonderful, blessed fall and a new beginning to your wonderful life to be.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your new book that just released, I think in September, wasn't it?
Yes, September 5th.
And it's called, you have a copy, Permission Granted, Changing the Paradigm for Women in Leadership. Look at that. Isn't that great?
Yes.
I love a bold cover. It just really captivates. It makes people to focus on it. So can you tell us a little bit of what caused you to want to write this book and what really is the profound message that you hope readers will take away from it?
Sure. So I was really excited about writing this book because of the work that I've been doing in the nonprofit and philanthropic corporate sector for over 20 years now, 25 years now actually. And really in my work, working one-on-one with women and really understanding sort of what gets in the way of, or what they think gets in the way of advancing their careers. And oftentimes it's just about giving themselves permission to be ambitious, to want what they want, to go after what they want. And so I thought it was just a great opportunity to take years of experience working in the sector and with and for women leaders to talk about how to give yourself permission.
And what I love about your book, because I talk about in my book, Powerful Beyond Measure, a lot of things that hold us back, and we have some common beliefs, and I'd love to bring those to bay, if you will, because I think we all tend to need guidance, and we're looking for information that can help us to prevent us from limiting ourselves. So one of the first things that come up for me in your book and in my books too is self-doubt, and also how we perceive things ourselves as well as what we think perceptions of others are. So let's take one at a time.
Yeah.
So what do you feel about how self-doubt really affects us individually?
Well, I think self-doubt is a tricky space. And I think that, sometimes questioning yourself is not a bad thing, right? Sometimes questioning yourself helps you make sound decisions. But when you're stuck on questioning yourself to the point of inaction or self-abdication, then really self-doubt has control over what you're doing in your life or what you're not doing in your life. And so self-doubt sort of manifests itself in a number of ways, and part of the reason I call the book Permission Granted is that for, almost 2 decades of our life or more, we're always asking for permission to do things, from the teacher, from the principal, from your parents, from your boss, and so you're constantly in this, this thinking that someone else has to give you permission, and that if they don't give you permission, then somehow, you shouldn't be wanting to do what you want to do, or you shouldn't be moving forward. And that's where self-doubt really comes in, because you hand over the power to make decisions for yourself and for your life to everyone else, rather than retaining that power and determining who's in that circle to help you make some of those decisions.
So important, because I agree, our power is within ourselves, but as soon as you give that power away and you relinquish it to others, that you're waiting for that permission, as you state in your title of your book, you allow them to be more powerful and more directive as to how you live and experience your life, and your experience the role you play in your life. So, so what would you call the root cause of our self-doubt? Where do you think that comes from?
Well, I think sometimes it's learned behavior.
Huh?
Right? Sometimes it's having a negative experience, and you take that negative experience and replay it over and over. Sometimes it's, trauma related, right? And your self-confidence and your self-concept has somehow, and you mentioned perception, you've somehow got a misperception of who you really are and what you can really do. So I think it's a little different for everyone, but I think the outcome is similar around the production of self-doubt. But a lot of the women that I work with, I hear all of those different avenues. I was always told as a child I couldn't do this, or I was always told not to reach too far, or to want too much, or to know my position. And certainly those of us who grew up in a certain era heard that a lot, right? Kind of stay within your comfort zone, stay where it's safe, stay where the community, your family, whatever. And so I think sometimes those messages really foster a sense of self-doubt around being able to do something completely different than what you've been raised to think you can do.
Right. And I always like to bring up here too that, this impact that we have as a child, or even throughout our life, but it tends to repeat, is that we can't blame it on them imposing it upon ourselves. For me, it's about our perception of what our parents said, how we took it in. Because you could have two children standing by the same mother saying the same exact sentence to them, and they're both going to take it away in a different way, a different perspective on that sentence, of how they feel about themselves. And I also think there's a little bit of a soul message. What do we hear as a spiritual soul to learn and grow on earth? So there's that aspect of it as well. And I think what I love about your book is also talks about that personal responsibility, which I am a really big advocate of that as well, Marcia. And so when we claim our power ourselves by taking personal responsibility for our past decisions, our past perception of our actions or inactions or situations, that then we in the present day, right, that we can decide how do we want to perceive our life in the present moment. Can you talk a little bit on that, how you actually encourage your clients and your readers to use different techniques or focuses to improve their perspective in the present?
Absolutely. So there are two things that I often talk to folks about. One is sort of, the concept of the red, yellow, and green light, right? And so oftentimes when we're about to make a decision that takes us a little away from our comfort zone, or a lot away from our comfort zone, and those self-doubt messages come up. Back here we're in the flight or fright, right? In the back of our brains, and we start to panic. And so we see the yellow light, and instead of interpreting the yellow light as caution, people actually interpret it as stop, right? And really what the whole, flight or fright mechanism is designed to do, for us, is to say, think, be safe, be smart, proceed with caution is what the yellow light really means. And so a lot of people misinterpret those feelings or those bodily sensations that come up, and they interpret that as, okay, I'm out of my comfort zone. I should stop, and I see it over and over again. It doesn't matter if you're a CEO. It doesn't matter if you're a senior leader. It doesn't matter if you're new into the profession. We all sort of interpret some of these feelings as information to stop what we're doing. And I often have to sort of talk with people about why that is. And so the second piece of it is really, ask yourself some questions. I think self-coaching is critically important. I think it's part of that self-responsibility is sort of like, how do I know this to be true? So often we interpret things, as you said, from past experiences. So, how do I know that to be true? And if it's true, do I really want to do anything about that? Right? If the answer is no, let it go. If the answer is, well, it's true and I want to do something about it, then get curious about that. What in particular and why? What is the outcome you're really looking for? I mean, be very intentional about that. But so many people, they take in information. It's not even accurate information. It doesn't resonate with them. It's not true about them. And, that's where it should stop. If you ask the question, is this true? How do I know this to be true? Is it true? No, it's not true. Then let it go.
Yeah.
And move forward. I think we spend so much time as women leaders, and what woman is not a leader, overthinking things and assuming that what someone says is in fact true and applies to us. And I think that really gets in the way. And again, self-abdication, right? Gives someone else the responsibility for telling you what to think and how to respond. So
yeah. I love the red, yellow, green light depiction. And I think you're right. People see the yellow light and most people already start to put the brakes on.
Yeah.
And because there's a fear of what's coming instead of, like you're saying, taking caution. I think the word even caution has a negative connotation. Doom or gloom is right. Lurking. It's around the corner.
Danger, right?
Yeah. Instead of assessing where you are at this moment, how do I proceed? Does it mean you have to feel that there's a trouble or obstacle there? It can be a wonderful, hurdle you have to overcome to succeed and overcome. And what I wanted to add to this, which I think is so important, you kind of started to allude to it, was the self-talk, the self-coaching that you're talking about. And I think this is really important. I know in part of your book and in mine as well, we talk about intuition. Yeah. And this is where I think is really important because you ask yourself certain questions. And what unfortunately we do, we let our mind, our thoughts, right. to, often dictate or kind of control or lead us in the same patterns we've been doing again and again, because we kind of surely know the outcome, even though we're not happy with the outcome. Right. But we don't tend to, especially women and men too, connect with that inner wisdom, that intuition that will always guide you for the greatest good. And if we can ask questions and be silent to hear the right response from within our heart, within our inwardness, that's really where we're going to get the power and the right wisdom. Do you agree?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that really spending time thinking about what you want and where you're going and slowing down that mental chatter. I talk a lot about that in folks I coach because, and I often say, and I think this is from Brene Brown actually, but if your boss, if your spouse, if your friend talked to you the way you talk to yourself, no one would ever want to be friends. You would fire, you would quit, you would end the friendship. And so we really need to learn how to be our own best friend, mm-hmm. and our own best advocate. And sometimes, and it happens to me still, you get busy and you think, oh gosh, why was I so silly? Or why that was stupid, or that was, and I'm thinking it and then I'm saying it out loud, which reinforces it. Right. And I have to stop myself and say, okay, everybody forgets their keys, or everybody forgets to do, or we all make mistakes. What can I learn from this? That one thing doesn't equate to all of this negative talk internally and externally that I'm actually putting myself through. And I think that back to the self-doubt, that's how to continue to perpetuate that self-doubt. Continue to talk to yourself in a way that's really negative and puts you down. And it's no wonder that that's where you're sitting, right? So really changing the way that you think and talk about yourself internally, but also externally to others is critical to advancing yourself.
Right. And I think for two reasons. One is that you're creating an inner dislike of yourself. You're constantly judging, and then that makes you also judge others in the same light. And also, if you're feeling this way about yourself, then you're sending that energy out to the universe. And law of attraction says people will see the same thing you're portraying, that you're emitting out. So it's so important to start with that self-love, that self-understanding that we're not perfect, but are in, our little limitations that we might see from moment to moment doesn't define us as a weakling, as someone that's not intelligent, resourceful, capable, loving, all of those other positive words.
Right.
So it's really important.
Self-love is, a lot of people are talking about it right now, and I hear, especially from some of my corporate clients, a kind of a rub up against that. It's a little too, and it's not that egomaniacal, like false bravado. It's that real, genuine. I'm whole. I'm healthy. I'm happy. I'm capable. I am able to make good decisions for myself. I am able to practice good self-care. That's what we're talking about in terms of self-love, not that crazy egomaniacal bravado. That is really just a mask for self-doubt.
Exactly. Insecurity, self-doubt, it's a facade. It's like you're really wearing a mask. You're portraying to the world, I am so self-confident. I can get up there and present this, and I know what I'm talking about. But the louder someone is, shouting or defaming you or degrading you, it's because they're actually from a place of weakness and poor self-doubt,
Right.
They're trying to convince themselves and put themselves in a higher position of understanding of where they are and who they are. It's really because they don't like themselves. They're actually pushing this on you.
Right. And then that perpetuates a cycle, right? Because they think they're going to feel better.
Right.
But they actually don't end up feeling better. They end up feeling worse about themselves. So not only do they feel bad, but the other person feels bad. So it's really hard to sometimes realize in the moment that you're doing that, and to pull back and to reframe what you're doing and what you're saying. But it's critical. And I think if we're going to work well in leadership teams and really achieve the mission and the goals of the organization, we have to start interacting with one another from that place of wholeness.
And some of the strengths that women typically have, I think, and I think you'll agree, are creativity. They're usually more creative than men. We have more feminine energy typically, which is more that creation, that innovation. Women can multitask. Men are very good at task-oriented objectives, but they usually will do one at a time, where women can take on many, many projects at one time and be very successful in that capacity. Also, we tend to know how to interrelate better sometimes with our subordinates. So if you are a leader, that's one that usually tries to also encourage people to rise and to become a superstar. But I know lots of women that also can feel very competitive as a boss, and that their underlings feel like they're always feeling like the boss doesn't want them to step on their toes. Yeah. Again, that would be a form of insecurity and self-doubt, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think, yes, women tend to be more collaborative and cooperative. Our roles in society as nurturers doesn't mean that every woman is born nurturing, nor is every man born without that ability.
Right.
But I think that those the way that women and girls are raised, and the expectations around that have created some very empathic women. And I think that we've not given men permission to have the same opportunity. So, sort of the gender bias that comes in, and we're telling boys, you got to be tough, you can't cry, you can't, and then girls are supposed to be able to express their emotions, but then you get in a leadership role and you hear, you shouldn't cry, you shouldn't, and so there's all these kind of crazy mixed messages about what it is to be human and what it is to be human in interaction with other people in the workplace.
And even more so in the 21st century, because now we have dual income families. Typically, sometimes the women make more money than the male partner. And also a lot of the males stay home and they're the Mr. Mom.
Exactly.
So, we have all these gender role transference, and you're exactly right. There's, we both genders can experience both traits, and we really should encourage that.
Right. We should encourage that. I mean, all of us are caretakers.
Yeah.
All of us are breadwinners. All of us are so, and every family has the right to decide for themselves how they're going to figure that out. But
Yeah.
our workplaces and our workspaces also need to sort of allow for everyone to be caretakers and everyone to be, and I think that sometimes women take that caretaking role into the office. And so suddenly they're there past 6 o'clock. They're missing certain things. And it's because they're caretaking in a way that actually is not productive for the company,
Right.
and it's not productive for them and their career. And so really addressing that is critically important for the individual.
It is, because as a leader, whether you're a mother leading your family, your children, or whichever the dynamics are, to me, my greatest role is empowering others. Even now, as I speak as a leader and a transformational, speaker and teacher, it's all about empowering the individual. So if you're a corporate manager, you want to empower your people below you to rise and to do, not to nurture and swaddle and cajole them where you're always making them feel better. Encourage them to find the skills. They have that power within to see their strengths and to rise upon.
Well, right. And when people feel like they're seen and heard at work and that they're respected and valued, then they work harder.
Yes.
They're more committed to the work, more committed to the company, and they feel safe and able to be open and vulnerable and learn. When you're in these power dynamics that are sort of shut this all down, do what I say, not what I do, it's not a healthy environment for anybody, and it creates this sense of dependency
Right.
on the leader. And then the leader's frustrated because they're doing everything and having to make all the decisions, and yet they don't realize that their leadership example is setting this situation and circumstance up. So
right, it's actually creating a culture and environment that you're breeding that codependency you're talking about, the distrust, the power struggle, and all of that. We often say that we grow and learn from the top down, from our leaders, whether it's the parents, whether it's our culture, our religion. And so we need to have a good framework that can allow us to grow and inspire and to pursue our passions. So it's really great.
Yeah.
Well, this has been wonderful. Anything else you want to add before we close?
No, I was just going to say, you were talking about intuition a little bit ago, and I think that that's where your intuition really needs to kick in too. If you're saying to yourself, this doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. And so then there's some, that series of questions to ask. And it doesn't matter if you're new to the company or you've been to the worked for the company for 20 years. We're all in the same process. It's just, some of us are more entrenched in old behaviors than others of us, but there's opportunity for everyone to sort of take on a leadership role at work. And I think we all should.
Absolutely. So Marcia and I are both giving you permission to escalate, to grow, to be a wonderful leader that you potentially have within you. Allow yourself to flourish and allow those below you, not below in equality, but below you in where you're ranking our business in your corporate world, to grow too, and not to be threatened by their progression.
Exactly.
So I thank you so much for taking time, and really go out and get permission granted, Changing the Paradigm for Women in Leadership. There's the book. And Marcia, why don't you tell everyone where you can get this book? I know we have the same wonderful publisher, Morgan James.
Yes, so you can get it online at Amazon. You can get it at Powell Books. You can get it at BAM. You can get it at bookstores across the country and airports or Barnes and Nobles and other places.
Books A Million. And if the bookstore doesn't have it, all you'd have to do is ask them to reach out and get it, because we have Ingram's Distribution House, which is around the world, so they can get the book to you at that physical location. So all you have to do is ask. So again, permission granted. Go out and allow yourself to grow and accomplish all your goals in your life that you want.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you so much, Marcia, and permission granted for you to take off and enjoy your vacation.
Thank you.
And thank you again for spending time with me today.
Certainly.
This is This is Cindy Mazzaferro with Powerful Beyond Measure. I look forward to seeing you on my Facebook page, The Power Within, Cynthia Mazzaferro. Until the next time, be well. Take care. You do have the power within to be remarkable, limitless, and achieve all the goals that you aspire to. Take care.